Today we start our final unit, Unit 12. We're almost finished. This is on 1993 to the present, or the modern era, we can call it, all right? So we're starting talking about the 1990s. That's what we'll be in today and next class, and then we will get into the 2000s next week, all right? So first off, we're going to talk about Bill Clinton and the Clinton years, as I call them. So he was president from 1993 until 2001, led us into the 21st century, and we're going to talk about his presidency here. So first off, 4 reasons why Bill Clinton won the presidential election in 1992. Well, first, he was very young, very charismatic, had a great personality. People liked him. He had this kind of cool guy persona that he kind of showed off. He played his saxophone on late night talk shows sometimes. There you have a guy named Arsenio Hall, who had a very popular late night show, and here you have a presidential candidate with sunglasses on playing the saxophone. That's just very rare, not something that people saw very often. So just kind of attracted to his personality in that way. He also connected with voters very well. He seemed personable and compassionate and caring, and he was also just very good in the debates against George Bush. Remember, George Bush had just unpopularly raised taxes, so Clinton was able to kind of use that against him there. Now, President Clinton's first lady, his wife Hillary Clinton, we all know about Hillary Clinton, probably from her more recent loss to Donald Trump in the 2016 election, but long before that, she was the first lady and Bill Clinton's wife. Now, during the election, Bill and Hillary were kind of marketed as like a 2-for-1 deal, meaning that Hillary would be a very active first lady while her husband was president, and she was. She was the first lady to have an office in the White House. She did a lot of the work with her husband. One of the things she worked on was trying to get universal health care off the table, which it never did, but it just kind of shows that she was a very active first lady there. Now, she did not really have the likable personality or eloquent speaking ability that Bill had, but she was just as smart and worked very hard on her first lady cause, which is what I just said, universal health care. But it did fail to pass into law. In February of 1994, President Clinton signed into law Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? Now, at this time, openly gay people were not allowed to serve in the military because it was believed that this would harm the unity or camaraderie in a military unit and, quote, risk the high standards of morale, good order, and discipline in a unit, all right? So gay people were not allowed to serve in the military. In fact, one way that some people got out of getting drafted was by saying that they were gay, because if you were gay, you wouldn't be sent to Vietnam because they thought that would harm the morale or the camaraderie in a military unit to have someone gay in there, all right? Now, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was signed by President Clinton in February of 1994, and this said that if you were in the military, you were not allowed to ask a fellow soldier if he or she was gay. Okay? And if you were gay, you had to keep that a secret and not tell anybody about it, all right? So what this did, I mean, to us, now in the modern era, okay, a lot of us say, well, why was it such a big deal that, gays in the military, why is that such a big deal? And you might look at Don't Ask, Don't Tell and say, oh, what a terrible thing, couldn't let people kind of be who they are. But really, it was good for the time because it allowed homosexuals to serve in the military as long as they were not openly gay or participating in homosexual behavior. Right? So it kind of gave homosexuals that opening to serve their country while at the same time being sympathetic to others. There's another law that President Clinton signed called the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA. This legally defined marriage for federal purposes as the union between one man and one woman. It said that same-sex couples would not be afforded the federal benefits like tax and legal benefits that go along with marriage, okay? So it's still allowed for certain states to recognize gay marriage. Massachusetts was the first one to do that if they voted to, but it reserved the term spouse and all the benefits that went along with it to heterosexual couples only. So it said that marriage was just between a man and a woman, and that homosexual marriage was not marriage. Okay, obviously, this was repealed later on because gay marriage is legal now, but we'll get more into that in a few days. So the 1990s economy was very good, okay, very, very good. Clinton oversaw one of the most prosperous economic times in U.S. history. And there are a couple reasons for that. The biggest reason was the boom of the dot-com industry, which means the creation of the internet. The internet was a new thing in 1990. And just that taking off was huge. You have all these big tech companies, the richest people in the world now are CEOs of Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Apple, places like that. Those companies were just getting off the ground at this time and making their money. And you also have other technological advancement, and the economy was just very, very good for most of the 1990s. In January of 1994, Clinton signed the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. Now, this has received criticism over the past 2 decades for a couple reasons. Some critics of NAFTA, for example, Donald Trump, says that was one of the worst deals ever. And critics of NAFTA say that it weakened the American job market because it made it easier for companies to outsource American jobs to Mexico and Canada. That means moving your companies to Mexico and Canada if you like their tax or business policies better, instead of making American companies stay in the U.S. and hire Americans. All right, so some people really liked NAFTA because I guess it was good for our relationship with Canada and with Mexico, certainly good for them, but it wasn't really kind of the American first policy that a lot of people today support. So 1996, the economy's going well. People mostly like Bill Clinton here, and so he runs for re-election, and he defeated Republican Bob Dole. Now, Bob Dole was Gerald Ford's former running mate from back in 1976 when he lost to Jimmy Carter. Bob Dole was also a World War II hero and veteran. He was wounded there, and he lost to Bill Clinton in re-election. So this was not a landslide. It was a close election, but it was still a decisive victory for Clinton. And like I said, the big reason why he won re-election was because of the positive economy of the time. Usually if the economy's going well, then usually the president is fairly popular. Donald Trump is one of the few exceptions to that rule. The economy's doing extremely well under him, but for some reason he's still unpopular. Now there's a guy named Ross Perot who ran against both Bush and Clinton in 1992 and against both Dole and Clinton in 1996, all right? He ran for president in both 92 and 96 as a third-party candidate, as an independent, okay? Now, he did not win any states in either election, but he did get a bunch of individual votes. Millions of people voted for Ross Perot both in 1992 and 1996. And if you look at his views are more Republican than Democrat. Okay, so a lot of the people who voted for Ross Perot in 92 and 96, if Perot hadn't run, they probably would have voted for Bush and Dole because they leaned more Republican. So if all of those who had voted for Perot in 92 had voted for Bush, then Bush would have beat Clinton. Similarly, if Perot's voters would have voted for Dole in 96 instead of for Perot, then Dole would have beat Clinton, all right? So Republicans really saw his campaigns as a sabotage and blame him for why Bush was not able to win re-election and why Dole was not able to defeat Bill Clinton. One of the saddest, probably the most tragic event of the 1990s was the Rwandan genocide. Now, sadly, the 20th century saw many genocides, many of which we have talked about already. You have the Armenian genocide, you have the Holocaust, of course, you have Stalin's purges, you have Mao Zedong's atrocities, and you have the Cambodian genocide with Pol Pot. And then here in 1994, in the course of just 2 months, a tribe called the Hutus slaughtered 800,000 people belonging to a tribe called the Tutsis, a massive genocide in the country of Rwanda. And all these people, okay, 800,000 people killed in just 2 months. That's an insane number of people killed in a very short amount of time. And they were not killed with guns. They were not killed with bombs. They were killed with machetes. Okay, they were hacked to death by machetes. Just horrific, okay, absolutely horrific images there. so many people, innocent people, dying. And what's really tragic about this is that a lot of other countries didn't really do anything about it. All right, this is seen as the most tragic event of the 1990s. Bill Clinton has said that his biggest regret of his presidency is not stepping in and intervening during the Rwandan genocide when we probably could have stopped all of it, or at least most of it. Okay, now we get into the personal affairs of Bill Clinton, something he's certainly famous for, something that really stained his presidency. And this all starts with a White House intern, came in 1995, and her name was Monica Lewinsky. She was 22 years old. Bill Clinton was about 50, and they had an affair. Okay? While working as a White House intern, she and the president had a sexual relationship. Now remember, Bill Clinton is married to Hillary. Okay? He's cheating on his wife here. He did that several times. Okay? It's just the kind of relationship they had. But this affair specifically, because it happened in the White House, it happened in the Oval Office, this affair was later brought to light in 1998, and it became a very highly publicized sex scandal. All right. Now, while JFK did similar things as president, so did LBJ and some other presidents of ours who were just bad husbands. While those things did go on before, the media was not as involved back then as it had become by the 1990s. By the 1990s, everything had become a tabloid sensation and 24-hour news, and the media was just very public and kind of personal with public figures like the president. Okay, so Clinton was forced to make a public statement about the affair once it had become a media frenzy and it was in all the papers and magazines and on the news about this supposed sex scandal that he had with this young woman. So in 1998, when Clinton addressed the nation about the sex scandal, he famously said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." That kind of became the tagline of his administration, all right? And Lewinsky had also denied their affair. Now, he had had former scandals in the past, not all of them of a sexual nature. There was one called Whitewater. And with Whitewater, he just lied about it and it went away. So with this, he said, you know what, I'm just going to lie about it again. Hopefully it'll go away. But this one didn't, okay, because it had to do with sex, and Americans are more interested in sex than they are with other things like real estate, which is what Whitewater was about, okay? So after an investigation had taken place, it was proven that, in fact, Clinton and Lewinsky had indeed had an affair. There was DNA evidence of that. And so Clinton was then charged with perjury, which is lying under oath, and suborning perjury for convincing Monica Lewinsky to lie under oath. So whenever he said there is not a sexual relationship or any kind of improper relationship between us, people asked, were you lying when you said that? And Clinton responded with one of the stupidest lines ever to come out of a president's mouth. He said, "It depends on what the meaning of the word is." Just, let that sink in for a minute. How silly of a statement that is, all right? To say it depends on what the meaning of the word is. Basically saying, is there a relationship? Was there a relationship? Things like that. And it became clear that, okay, he's clearly unhinged here. He has lied. Okay, what else has he lied about? A lot of people started wondering. So since it had been proven that the President of the United States had knowingly lied under oath to the American people, Congress began impeachment proceedings. Okay, a president has to be impeached by both the House of Representatives and the Senate in order to be kicked out of office. All right, you have to have committed high crimes and misdemeanors, and the House of Representatives had determined that, yes, by lying under oath, the president had committed a high crime or a misdemeanor. All right. Now, only one other president in history had ever been impeached, and that was Andrew Johnson. He was impeached by the House, but declared not guilty by the Senate, so he got to stay in office. All right. So with Clinton here, all right, he was impeached by the House of Representatives. He was found guilty. All right. Now, just to be clear here, some people think that he was impeached because he had an affair. Now, while having an affair is a terrible thing, it is not technically illegal, all right? What he was impeached for was lying about that affair under oath, okay? So whenever he was impeached, it then went to the Senate, all right? So the Senate had a 21-day trial, And after this trial, the Senate found Clinton not guilty. They did not impeach him. He was acquitted, and he was allowed to remain in office until the end of his term in 2001. All right, so he was able to avoid full impeachment or conviction, all right, and got to remain in office. All right, now a few things that increased throughout the world during the 1990s. Sadly, tragically, radical Islamic terrorism really increased throughout the world in the 1990s. You have groups like Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. They're carrying out numerous terrorist attacks all throughout the Middle East and Africa, including one in Somalia and Mogadishu, which killed several American soldiers. If you've ever seen the movie Black Hawk Down, that's what it has to do with, the battle in Mogadishu in Somalia. All right, so the hunt for Osama bin Laden, this terrorist leader of Al-Qaeda, the hunt for him really began in the 1990s, but he was not found. Okay, and this eventually culminated in the attacks that he organized on September 11th, 2001. All right, last thing here, Y2K. All right, you may have never heard of Y2K because you weren't alive during it, but Y2K stands for year 2000, and this was this huge scare throughout the country in 1999, and it was the fear that on January 1st, 2000, all computers would malfunction and all data would be lost, since people thought computers would not be able to distinguish between the years 2000 and 1900. Because every time a year had changed since the beginning of computers, only 1 or 2 digits on a year had ever changed, okay? It had always been 19 something, okay? Computers were created in 19 something, all right? So every year had been 19 something whenever years turned over on computers, right? So some people thought that whenever it became 2000, computers would register that as 1900 and all data would be lost. Okay, some people even thought the world would end because we're coming in to a new millennium. However, no serious problems resulted from the turn of the millennium. Literally nothing happened on that day, all right, and things looked very bright in America at the time. Now, in 2000, Bill Clinton's wife, Hillary, fueled by her husband's political career, she ran for public office and won the election for Senator of New York in 2000. She remained Senator of New York until 2009. Then she became Secretary of State under Obama, later ran for president herself in 2016 and lost. Now, Bill Clinton still remained relatively popular even after his impeachment. He just kept kind of improving in the polls. And he left office with a decent approval rating. And that kind of goes to show that a lot of times Americans don't care as much about a president's personal failures. They care about how likable of a personality he has or how well the economy's doing. Okay, so he had decent approval ratings when he left office. All right, so those are the Clinton years. Let me know if you have any questions about them.